It takes a lot of practice to sound this good. And I mean this good. I'm joking. Today we have a fabulous guest who's going to be talking to us about voiceover work and the importance of inflection and tone and speed, light and shade of the voice. It's something that's fascinated me for a very long time, and she joins us from overseas. She's got the most incredible name. It's Jennie Eriksen. She's making conversations about voiceover count. What's new with you, Wendy Woo? I love this little bit of sharing what I've been up to. And recently I went to the Love Biz Ladies Awards. It's an event that's usually held in October every year, and the lovely Sue Crooks has had to reorganise it 3 times because of a pandemic. It was fabulous to spend an evening with my daughter, who works on the show in the background, and there were 55 ladies all in their bling. It was a noise to be reckoned with, but it was fabulous because I was able to witness the winner of a panel that I had been privileged to judge. It was an emotional evening, and I cleaned up on the raffle. We've got a new review too, and it's from our regular Wolfie. Here's what she has to say about the Graham Nash episode. A wonderful and insightful conversation, Wendy. Graham's integrity is defined by overcoming adversity and making the right choice. Family will always come first. A dinosaur, Doctor and Disney make this a memorable podcast to listen to. Gosh, Wolfie, we couldn't agree more with you. So come on, Jennie, where are you in the world today and why?
The obvious answer is that I'm married to a Norwegian. So as soon as I say that, people go, I get why you're there. But actually, it's not why I'm here. Actually, it was a little bit of parental stuff, actually. Both our children, because my husband is Norwegian, have dual nationality. And as it happened, our son wanted to study in the US. And Norway is a particularly good country in helping students to be able to do that. They have a wonderful loan system, a loan program, but you have to actually live here. So our son had to live and to study here for a certain period of time before he was eligible for that. So we were a little bit strategic. We moved back actually for him, and he took all the appropriate tests and lived here and everything. And that facilitated him going to study in Michigan. So that was the reason we did it.
10 points to Norway for having the sort of system that encourages international education.
What they hope is that you'll learn lots of good stuff abroad and, of course, bring it back to Norway to implement it. So it's a good strategy, but it certainly supports students who want to take a different route in terms of studying. And, of course, if you study here in Norway, it's free.
Gosh, there'll be a rush at the visa office, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So you're based in Norway. You're from the UK originally. I alluded to your company name, which is Lovely Voice. How has your business changed? So tell everybody a little bit about what you do and how you help people and what being in Norway has meant.
My husband and I have always championed small businesses. That's the essence of what we do. And that, as you and I met at networking, that's where I first started my networking almost 20 years ago. Lovely Voice was actually born out of, we actually lived in Tenerife for a while, and we moved. We'd actually had a small business magazine that covered Essex and Hertfordshire, and it was 9,000 circulations. So we extended our passion, if you like, for championing small businesses into actually creating a magazine, which we were super, super proud of. And it actually did what we wanted it to do. We created powerful messaging that meant that people had adverts that made people want to connect with them and use their services. But we literally did the whole thing ourselves. We created everything, all the adverts, and we walked the magazine around to all 9,000 households. And because it actually did what it said on the tin, we'd get advertisers say, I don't need to advertise this month with you because I've got X amount of new clients, or I'm only a one-man band hairdresser and I'm maxed out and I don't need to advertise. So we were literally on a hamster wheel of always just putting this magazine out there, coming back, having a cup of tea, starting again, finding new advertisers. And it just became too much. And with growing children, we just, if you want to call it burnout, if you like, but really and truly, we were completely spent. So we decided to move to Tenerife.
Sounds like you were a victim of your own success, though. And I get that because I can do some projects myself and put a time limit of, it should be a 3-month campaign or something, and it can end in 8 or 9 weeks. And because you've got the results that you need already. So I'd see that as a positive thing, really, that led you to Tenerife next?
To Tenerife, yes, it was a positive thing. What the magazine at the time, hindsight is a wonderful thing when you think about it, really and truly. It would have been great to work with people that saw what they did and wanted to replicate and grow their staff. But, really and truly, it served that one-man band. We had, for example, a window cleaner that had a particular washing system. It was super duper and stuff. So he did posh window cleaning, if you like. But there was only him. He didn't want to expand. He didn't want a team. The advert worked and he was working on several houses every single day of the week. When people are just one person and you max them out, they don't have capacity for any more. So really and truly, we needed to draw the attention of people that wanted to grow their businesses, if you like. So, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But yes, we went to Tenerife because we thought that was a good idea. We went on a bit of an adventure. My husband did some consultancy and I ended up teaching at the local theatre school, which my daughter was part of. So that kind of drew on my performing arts background because I used to love amateur theatre, amateur dramatics. And so I had the opportunity to teach the children and prepare them for their LAMDA exams, which is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. And that's really where the voiceover work started, because I was working with the children in terms of words and intonation, the light and shade of things, and then had the opportunity to record for somebody. And the beauty of voiceover work is that technology is such that we don't have to be, in a studio as such. As long as we can replicate a studio quality sound, you can be anywhere in the world. And in fact, I've narrated for over 60 countries, people that I've never had the opportunity to meet, but nevertheless can produce something for somebody in Singapore as much as I can in Coventry.
It is incredible how technology connects the whole world, the parts of it that are able to connect, obviously. What sort of voiceover work do you do, Jenny? I mean, is there a specific sort of client that comes to you? Do you attract similar sorts of businesses, or can it be absolutely anything from any kind of diverse field?
Voiceover, it's one of those things when we talk about niching. Voiceover is very much played to your strengths. So if you kind of hear my voice is obviously a midlife lady. It's got a certain amount of gravitas, if you like. It's got a warm tonality. So my voice lends itself very well, if you like, to things like e-learning. Or if I play characters, invariably I'm mum or doctor or office manager or something like that. So we're not one size fits all unless you're super clever and can replicate lots of different sounds. We tend to work within our field of expertise. So something that's kind of, YouTube, 10 things about the Kardashians, clearly I don't have the voice for that. If you want authority or, as I say, warmth, then my voice lends itself very much to that. So predominantly most of my work is actually e-learning, because I've got that kind of command, if you like, in my voice and the warmth and the assurance. And I actually narrate for a very big company in Denmark, actually a pharmaceutical company. And that was something they very much wanted, that they wanted their staff to understand instruction, but not be, if you liked, talked at, rather included in the conversation. Because obviously when you're dealing with something that's, fine tuning in terms of, pharmaceuticals, that, they have to be careful as staff, but also the end user has to have a product that is absolutely safe to use. They wanted somebody that had warmth and the gravitas, if you like, at the same time, that kind of brings together the training program. So, for example, I will send them some modules and then it's kind of a rinse and repeat thing. They say, hey, we've got another few chapters to do. Would you do the same as usual? That's actually a big compliment when somebody says that, hey, we're trusting you with this and can you do the same as usual? It's like they're saying to you, we love what you do, we trust what you do, and we're leaving it in your hands to do what you do well. So
that you've clearly found your style of delivery that works for them, that they're happy with. I think what you're saying is right. There's a certain sort of tonality that we kind of pick our ears up to and we want to listen greater. If it's got a hint of intimidation in it, for example, you would probably sort of back off. Your mind could potentially start to wander. And if you're learning, you've got to hold people's attention, haven't you, as well, which is another key trick. So not only has it got to be very carefully scripted, but the way that you deliver those words has got to be in such a way that you keep them and they get to the end.
It's interesting because people think a 2-minute narration will take you 2 minutes. It doesn't take you 2 minutes. It's so much more than that. One of the gripes, if you like, in the voiceover industry is that people will say, hey, I've got this project and they're charging X amount of money. And a lot of maybe perhaps the old school will say, gosh, that's really insulting. That's a very low amount of money. And there are people that will lowball you because technology is such, when we think in terms of AI voice, how wonderful that now sounds and how going forward that's going to sound even better. But, there are genuinely people that don't realize the process that goes into it, that when they send you a script, a 2-minute script, it's going to take you longer. You're going to look at that script. You're going to see where the light and shade is. We have to add things to the script. Where are we going to focus on a particular word? Where are we going to maybe speed up a little bit? Where does the script change? Sometimes I'll look at a script and the first part of it, maybe it's a little bit doom and gloom. We're setting the scene. Things are not perhaps so great. And then there's a turning point in the script where we're offering hope to the listener. And maybe that goes with an explainer video too. So all that has to be worked out before you even step into the studio. And then, of course, you're going to make bloopers. You'll listen to yourself and think, no, I didn't really nail that line. That's not really how I want it to sound. And then obviously you've got the cleaning and the processing. You want to send something that's of tip-top quality to people. You don't want any ums and ahs and noise in there. And all that takes time. And then maybe there are other things that a client might need too. They might need a music bed. They might need that narration to be synced to a video, so that what you're saying comes at a certain point in a video. And all that takes time, certainly longer than perhaps the 2 minutes that somebody thinks of initially.
I agree, Jenny. I mean, it's like anything. You might be paying for something today that you only perceive as taking this long, but would take years of learning and honing that craft. And I don't think we ever stop learning our craft, do we? There's always going to be times when I know certainly I can look back at something and go, oh, I would do that a little bit differently now. And it's that hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah. I listen back to the early days and I sometimes think I'd like to give the client their money back because I thought I was doing everything I felt I should then, in terms of quality, but I feel I've moved on, it's such a long way since I first started and I listen and I think, no, I would, sometimes I think, no, that's how I would do it. And other times I think, no, I would maybe change that around a little bit. So yes, you're right. You're always a work in progress and there's always stuff to be learned for sure.
In terms of voiceover work, I know that there's lots of different types of it for advertising. There's different mediums now. We can literally pick up sound media anywhere. You've got podcasting, you've got YouTube, and you've got people's websites. It's such a rich medium to be involved in. If you could pick one area that you perhaps have a burning desire to get involved in, what would that be?
Wow. As I say, I normally play to my strengths, and so that's normally e-learning. Actually, meditation is something I actually narrate. I've actually created some meditation tracks too, but I got the opportunity the other day of actually playing, I can't divulge too much, I'm actually playing an evil character in an online game. I don't know how they'd heard it, but I've actually got a demo reel that's actually got characters on it. And somebody reached out to me and just said, could you be our evil character? So Again, that alludes to what I was saying earlier. The first time I did the first rounds of all the lines and I sent them and they just said, could you sound meaner? So I had to literally almost put myself in a bad mood. Well, in fact, I did put myself in a bad mood because the character really had to be very evil. You know, she was literally slaying people all over the place. And they wanted could I do some sounds where I was being stabbed? And also could I do some sounds where I was dying? So, but I love it. I had an email this morning. They love what I sent. So this, the first time around, wasn't so great. Second time around, yeah, more please. That would be cool. I'd love to do more of that.
I can't imagine how I would sound dying. I'd have to do some research on that, and maybe my browser history would be a little bit questionable. It's that kind of challenge, isn't it, that puts you into sort of research mode and gives you yet another layer, I think, of diversity to be able to go, yeah, I can do that. Even if it is a challenge and it takes a few goes at it, you'll be super proud because you pushed yourself outside.
There are times when you're going to look at a brief and think that just isn't me. And that's where I think community comes into anything that we do. For example, I live in Norway and I get a lot of people saying, could you do this Norwegian script? No, I can't, because I would sound like a Brit narrating in Norwegian. I wouldn't sound authentic. So I would rather, when I get requests that I don't think are in my wheelhouse, I'd rather reach out to somebody in the community and say, hey, younger person or male or somebody that does something different, this is not for me. How about, can I pass this on to you? We get scared. So many people get scared, whatever industry that they're in, that somebody appears in the same room that does what they perceive is the same as them. And we get very intimidated by people. But actually, when you reach out to other people, I've had people that have done projects with me. So, for example, a guy called Scott that I do work with, he's my guy. And he does lots of different voices. And when we're doing perhaps kids' stories or something, he's my go-to guy. Or if somebody needs a guy and doesn't need a female, well, then I'm going to send that project to him. Or if I need somebody that needs to do some more character voices, or indeed my daughter, when she's actually home, does amazing character voices. And so often I get a request for her and people say, is Pia back? And from university. And of course, no, she isn't. Well, I do. No.
It's that what goes around comes around as well, isn't it? In your field or other fields, or just in general.
You're better off having a virtual coffee with somebody or a one-to-one and getting to know them better. And I choose to believe in community over competition, because even when you and I go to networking meetings and we hear people talk, if somebody does do the same as you, or what you perceive is the same as you, one person, and you need their services, or somebody that needs their services, one person will resonate better with you. It'll be their messaging, it'll be their je ne sais quoi, it'll be their vibe, it'll be something. And I can audition and for a part and somebody else can do the same. And I can listen to my audition and think that I've nailed it. And that's great. I couldn't do it any better. They just might prefer the other person's voice. That's nothing against me. It just means on this occasion, they met the brief. They sound like the character or the voiceover that they want. And I didn't. So I can't take that personally. We live to fight another day, and other things do come up for me that maybe other people have been considered for, and I've been chosen on this particular occasion. That's just the way it goes. If you think like that, you're not setting yourself up for disappointment.
And there'll be a queue after listening to today of people saying, Jenny, I want you to be my evil character.
Well, yeah, it's I surprised myself, actually. My husband listened back and was kind of, oh wow, you sound really mean. Oh yeah, I'm a real baddie. And the death sounds had to be obviously I'd got my comeuppance and somebody had obviously done away with me. Another interesting part of the job that I was going to mention to you, of course, is working with clients overseas as well. That's another thing. Obviously, as I mentioned, I've worked for over 60 different countries, which is a huge privilege. But sometimes what works perhaps in the German language that gets translated into English doesn't work. So again, it's about that client work and going the back and forth of the client saying, I understand where you're coming from, but in English, that's not quite a good fit. Sometimes, of course, a very typical thing with clients is that they have a particular thing that they want to say, a particular script to go with a video, and the script is far too long. So then you have to be the bearer of bad news and say, I hear what you want to say, but that's just not going to fit. And that's true, of course, with you and I, with networking, typically we need to think that about 150 words is a minute. That's what I tend to base my voiceover on, is at 150 words in a minute. So when people go to, for example, networking meetings and they're trying to cram 170, 80, 90 words into a minute, you can, of course.
Mr. Genius comes to mind.
If you want your message to land and resonate and permeate and for people to hear it and for it to be absorbed, then 150 words a minute is a good speed. When we have newsreaders, they read slightly more quickly, about 180 words a minute. And the reason they do that is because we don't need every word. We hear those words: Brexit, Boris, viruses, what's happening in the world.
Switch off the keywords.
Exactly.
Oversaturating your space.
Exactly. But we have to look to see if the words fit the video. And also sometimes, as I mentioned to you earlier, there are some parts you're going to narrate more slowly than others because you really want to emphasize certain points, or maybe you're narrating in a particular mood before you switch to a more hopeful mood. And there the voice would be more upbeat, would be quicker. As I say, that's true with English-speaking clients, but also with international clients where you're having to say that doesn't fit, that doesn't work, because obviously all languages are different in terms of word count.
I was talking to a good associate of mine last week, and he speaks Mandarin, and he's looking to go overseas and spend some time working at a university. And he's looking to sort of get himself from a grade 4 to a grade 7. Clive, I do hope I remembered that technically right, because I know how particular he is. But it was certainly something that he was sort of saying, that he will be in a better place to be able to translate things, having understood the culture and the language. But to translate it back into English can be a challenge because it's not exactly word for word. And much the same as you mentioning like 150 words per minute, and you having to change around the wording for a video. I was sent a video and asked to just give some feedback from a sales and marketing point of view. And it was about 15 or 20 minutes long. But it was very much from the sellers. I'm selling to you. It was from their perspective. So I gave my feedback and just sort of said, look, I'm confused. I don't know what it is that you're actually trying to tell me. This might work if you've got a two-way conversation going on, but you've not got somebody coming back to you. So you've got to think about what that journey is, that attention, interest, desire, and outcome that you want, so that you keep people engaged right the way to the end. So in actual fact, Jenny, what you're doing is you're not just delivering a great voiceover, but you're kind of allowing the structure to flow.
Exactly. And you have to keep people's attention. That's really important. That goes back to, as I was mentioning with the pharmaceutical company, the object of the e-learning narration is to train people, but to keep their attention. So you have to, each script, if you like, is a journey. So if I get different scripts to do throughout the day, I have to look at each one and see what each individual need is and what we're trying to achieve, and to be able to have good communication with the clients. So you've got some back and forth. And, I like to, wherever I possibly can, give some input and just say, how about this or what about that? And most people will say, oh, yes, gosh, that's great. Because they, of course, want the end product to do what it's supposed to do.
Because there is such a boom now in webinars and on-demand learning, if you like, do you give coaching or feedback to people who've created content to say, how do you see this? Is this going to be engaging enough? Am I saying the right thing in the right place? Are you able to help people in that kind of field who've maybe not really pushing their content because they're not quite sure if it's hitting the mark or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's definitely something that I do. So I work actually together with my husband, who he's created a virtual event management system. So we work with a lot of people that put on webinars and seminars and such. So we'll often get people come to us and say, I've had the opportunity to be, for example, on a podcast or a webinar, and I want to be able to be engaging. So I'd like to be asked, I'd like to be a good podcast guest, or I'd like to speak on a webinar, because there is the opportunity to maybe, give an offer to, what I'm selling, or be asked back again. But how do I do that? So I very much sit down with clients and we look at, what they're saying and scope out something that really works, so that they've got, interesting information and, genuinely are good to listen to. So yeah, for sure. It's really bringing the words on the paper to life. And it is performance. What we do is performance. We are, if you like, selling ourselves. So whatever we do, when we go to networking meetings or we do Facebook Lives, we are selling ourselves. We are wanting people to be interested in what we have to say. So there is a degree of performance in it. And that might make people say, well, that's not very genuine. I want to be myself. Of course you do. But at the end of the day, we want to convey what we want to say. And there's a lot to be said for looking at the ebb and flow of what you're saying. And often, as I mentioned before, I call them word vomiters, people that speak 900 miles an hour at us because they want to give what we think is perceived value. They have so much to tell us that they tell us so quickly that we lose the information, and less is actually more. You're actually better off saying less and piquing somebody's interest to have a further conversation than to word vomit all over them. And people just feel they don't know what to do with the information. And the chances are they probably switched off partway through anyway. So if you were to say to the people in the room, what does Mary do? Most people go, oh, I don't really know, because most people just feel it was just too much information. As I say, we are geared to want to provide good value, but often good value is actually giving less, so that people have the opportunity to take on board your message and to listen to what it is you have to say.
I want to ask you about that one conversation that created a turning point for you, and what happened next.
Wow. I can think of lots of pivotal conversations. As I've mentioned before, part of the reason I enjoyed so much being a voiceover person was because you get to sit in a small dark room talking to yourself. And actually, one of the reasons we moved to Tenerife before we moved here to Norway was actually the magazine really challenged us. And I actually had a neurological problem that started in one side of my face. So basically, before we left Tenerife, I had something called a hemifacial spasm. So half of my face started to misbehave. I couldn't smile properly. I couldn't open my eye properly. It was really, really debilitating. And at the time, the only treatment for it, strangely enough, was actually to have an operation, which it wasn't recommended at that time, or to actually have Botox. So whilst people say, Botox is that thing that people use to make themselves look good, indeed, Botox actually does have a purpose in terms of helping people with hemifacial spasm, or people that have maybe dystonia or excessive sweating or whatever. It actually has a medicinal
serious side to it, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that was the route I took when we went to Tenerife, and that was something I could have there. But we talk so much in terms of face-to-face. We talk so much in, smile or whatever. When you can't do those things that people take for granted, your confidence just takes a nosedive. So working with the kids was a great outlet, although, children do tend to say exactly what they mean. So I've had a few tricky conversations with children. Why does your face do that? Why doesn't your face do that? So conversations, I think the pivotal conversation was when we came here to Norway, I said to my husband, I don't think I can continue like this. I know that we've moved on in terms of technology, and I know the operation is available, and I know it's available here in Norway, and it's not without risk. There is a possibility to damage your eyesight or your hearing, or even to make the situation worse. You get to the point where you think, I'd rather do that and try than not try at all. So that, I guess, the pivotal conversation for us was, shall I go for it? And to cut a very long story short, I did go for it. And 5 years ago, actually, this year, I had the operation. And when I had it, there are varying degrees of success. Some people are better overnight. Some people will never get better. Some people have 2-3 operations. And it literally is brain surgery. What it is, it's what causes the hemifacial spasm is 2 nerves in your brain they've lost something called the myelin sheath. So 2 nerves are hitting each other, and that's what causes your face to contort. So if you can think of something like Bell's palsy, where your face drops and contorts, that's exactly as it is. And what they do is actually put Teflon in your head. So literally, I do have a frying pan in my head. They put Teflon in between the nerves. That has to be brain surgery. So they have to go in, into your brain area. And 6 weeks of recovery, I was about 80% better, for which I was very, very grateful. And then in the fullness of time, I then became as I am today. So pretty much sort of 95, 97% better. But that's not quite the happy ever after, because when you haven't done something for a long time, you have to learn all over again. It's like when people have accidents and they have to learn to walk again. I had no idea how to smile. People do the smile thing. I had no idea how to naturally smile. I'd learned all these different techniques on how to prop my face open, how to keep my eye open, how to pull my mouth down so it didn't look like, so it wasn't scaring people, so to speak. So I literally had to start all over again. And the reason I now can work online with people, as you and I meet, because I learned how to smile and I learned how to be confident in myself. So I hope when I work with clients in terms of their messaging, that gives them the confidence to try, because it is possible. With little steps along the way, with momentum, we can learn to be confident online. So yeah, the pivotal conversation was that one, shall I go for it? And I did.
It's that would you rather, isn't it? If the choice is this or this, you've got to be prepared to take the risk.
Yeah.
Either way, haven't you, of doing it or not doing it. It's interesting because we watched over the weekend and I actually stayed up late to finish watching it. I thought I'd just put it on and see what it was like. And it's actually based on a true story. It's what we call a boats film in our house. Can we watch a boats film? And it was called Brain on Fire. A 21-year-old that literally her brain just stopped. Things were not connecting and she wasn't remembering things. She was acting out and different things were happening to her. And it was just that one side of her brain had stopped working. And it took a lot of effort and it took a lot of investigation to identify and diagnose. But now this, it's like lots of things. She's gone on as a journalist to support that particular illness that affects very few people. And it's much the same in lots of what we do, isn't it? Is that we go and we take it from a point of personal experience because it's what matters most to us. We know it's going to matter to others.
Exactly. And this certainly gives me a good basis to help other people, because even now, even 5 years down the line, if somebody were to make me really laugh out loud, my automatic go-to would be to put my hand in front of my face. It's still a response that's there. I don't need to, but my brain still does that. It's protection mode.
Formed the habit, haven't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when people say they don't feel very confident about this and that, I get it. I truly do. And we all have our own journey. So this is not a comparison that, having brain surgery is worse than having this and that. We all have our own journey and we all have our own foibles and stuff. It's about a conversation with somebody. So with clients, it's invariably, if I speak to somebody about their messaging, 99.9% of the time, it isn't about their messaging. It's about how they feel. You have to go backwards about how they feel in terms of being online and Zoom, and then looking at their message, because invariably there is something else before that is making them not feel congruent with their messaging, so to speak. And when you feel confident and when you have a message that you feel confident with, that vibe, as we spoke about earlier, that comes out and you look at people and they become expansive in the Zoom window and they become animated and there's something about them. They just become instantly appealing. So whether or not, we want their service or we're looking obviously to help people, but there is just something about them that we enjoy listening to them because everything is in alignment, their message, their body language, everything, and they're expansive and it just becomes, compelling to listen to.
Whilst we might be constricted to Zoom and online working, we can still pack a powerful punch, can't we, Jenny?
For sure. And we've obviously had to deal with some things in the world in the last 18 months, and that's, a global interrupt, if you like. But we have an amazing opportunity to connect with people all over the world now. If you have Zoom fatigue, well, then you need to address why you have Zoom fatigue, but to not use Zoom to connect with people in different places when there are millions and millions of people that if you're a service provider, you could connect with and work with. So, I work with people not being scared to press the button and talk about what they do.
Yeah. Well, I've put quite a few pins in the map, but certainly I haven't put 60 pins. So I've got some catching up to do. Jennie, it's been an absolute delight and an incredible journey that you've been on to get to where you are today, helping people, bringing that little voice up a little in volume. It's been an absolute pleasure to have met you and to be able to invite you onto the show today. We like to carry on the conversation. So I know that you're going to get us a letter to listeners for the website, but if people want to carry on today after listening, what's the best place for them to find you?
You can find me at lovelyvoice.com. And the reason it's Lovely Voice is because I couldn't think what to call my company. And years ago, somebody said to me, oh, you do have a lovely voice. So it's lovelyvoice.com.
There you have it, some real great tips from Jennie on how you can improve your voiceover work. Whether you apply that to your networking meetings and your introductions, to creating video online to share for your customers to find you. It's really a good idea to do your research and to practice your voiceover work for yourself. And of course, if you don't want to do it yourself, just get in touch with Jennie. I'm sure she'll be happy to do it for you. Now then, I've also had some feedback from Eric in Barry. He's had a copy of my book and he pointed out that one of the great tips for him was on page 46. And it was where I'm saying, what's the reason for you to want to speak to somebody that you've never spoken to before? And he's highlighted this sentence. Please do not expect someone to be prime and ready to purchase from you on your first call. Gosh, it's one of the greatest ways to overcome that mindset of speaking to somebody and starting a relationship. So we can head over to the website and pick up the letter to listeners from Jennie, and you can also leave a review for us there too. Don't forget to grab a copy of my book on Amazon, and I think I've still got a deal on the Kindle price for you. Until next time, where we're going to be joined by the fandabulous, the spectacular Stella De Silva.
Sometimes we are also the product of our own upbringing. We are the product of the way our parents have brought us up. To have that self-belief, to have that motivation.